Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Namo Aniruddhaya Hishikeshendriyatmane Namaha Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nivatatmane Swargapavarga Dwaraya Nityam Sachisade Namah Namah Hiranyaviryaya Chaturhotraya Tantave. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So today we are concluding our 2 month or several 8 weeks discussion on the Sri Harinam Cintamani. The Sri Harinam Cintamani is the discussion between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Haridas Thakur on the most wonderful topic of being able to understand the potency of the pure names and also to be able to remove the offenses that are associated with chanting of the holy names which prevent us from advancing. So in the past 8 weeks, we started on the 2nd of March, and then today we are on the 28th of May. In almost this 2-month time frame, we have covered all the topics of Sri Harinam Cintamani, except for the last chapter. The last chapter of the Harinam Cintamani, which is provided by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, talks about the bhajana of confidential worship. So they're talking about very advanced topics of rasa, talking about the different mellows of bhava and so on and so forth, which in one sense is to be shared, but for most part, it is better if it is shared contextually rather than focusing purely on the topic of discussion. What do I mean by that? Srila Prabhupada, in all his books, has touched upon these very confidential aspects of rasa. The many paintings that we see in ISKCON have also depicted the association of the divine couple in the most confidential mellows. However, both Srila Prabhupada and his Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada, both of them refrain from sharing confidential topics openly, or rather disclosing details of confidential topics of bhajan in their books. And the reason being that they wanted to protect the more confidential subject matter of bhakti. Bhakti is very confidential. It is not secretive. It is not a secret because we are not a cult. We are practitioners of the highest spiritual process available on the planet. We are calling upon the holy names, which is the Yuga Dharma. We are not a cult. We don't have any secrets. But there are confidential topics. And confidential topics are such that they have to be discussed when one reaches, or rather develops the adhikar or the authority for them to be able to participate in such. In English, we can say that one has to be sufficiently sacred before they can enter into very highly sacred grounds. Otherwise, the sacred grounds are somewhat confidential, and it would not help the practitioner who has not fully understood what is the meaning and the essence of such topics. So, as far as the last chapter goes, Srila Prabhupada has described rasa. He has described it in Nectar of Devotion. He has described it quite elaborately. There have been many instances in Srimad Bhagavatam where the confidential topics of rasa and so on and so forth have been discussed. But there was no such thing as a focused discussion just on very confidential topics, simply to keep it confidential. And the belief in our acharyas and Srila Prabhupada is that as we progress further in the chanting of the holy names and we unfold internally as we chant the holy names, the unfolding internally by rendering service and by able to chant purely, by participating in Gaur Leela, one automatically qualifies himself or herself to participate in Vraja Leela, which is non-different. And at the appropriate stage of bhakti, when our shraddha, when our faith crystallizes, when our bhakti matures and we are free of offenses, we have crossed the stage of anarthas, there is anartha nivirti, freedom from offenses. Then one is able to enter into more confidential topics, and it happens in a spontaneous manner. It is not forced upon one, neither is it restricted. It happens quite spontaneously because one is very eager for them to know the Leelas of the Lord. One is very eager to understand the unfolding that occurs while chanting the pure holy names. All of these eagerness and greed automatically leads one to that position. And greed is possible, it's also a natural condition. It is not unnatural, it is not something where one has to force themselves to think that they have greed. If we chant purely, greed will develop. It's a matter of association with names. The pure holy names would allow us to be very eager to understand Krishna, to understand his Leela, to understand and be able to remember the wonderful pastimes that are associated with the Lord. And automatically, it's an organic process for us to be able to enter into such remembrance and knowledge. So what we want to do is we don't want so much to break the tradition which Srila Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur have offered, because our purpose of these 8-week sessions or weekly twice sessions for almost 8 weeks, close to 16 sessions, I think 15 because we missed a couple of weeks, was for us to reach a stage of being able to understand the implications of chanting purely, and also to understand what is holding us back, and also for us to be able to remove those blocks and for us to be able to make progress. That is our purpose. And then once we do this, everything else is a matter of process. It would happen, and we would come across confidential topics. We would come across, conclusions. We would become very eager, because one cannot remain without becoming greedy and eager when they reach the proper stage of evolution in Bhakti Rasa. So what am I going to do today, being the last day of sharing of Sri Harinam Cintamani? Today, I just want to focus on a quick recap. And this recap would help us see how topics have been given to us by the Acharyas, and how we can take advantage of the topics as well. So the first session, we spoke of the fact that we spoke of our nature. We spoke of the fact that depending on the yuga, the dependence on sadhana versus dependence on kripa changes, and it is quite disproportionate. In other words, we spoke about Satya Yuga, where the environment is conducive, the lifespan is conducive, the sukriti which is available is conducive. As a consequence, the amount of kripa available is negligible. People are completely dependent on their own prowess, and they engage in sadhana for many thousands of years for them to reach their goal. And then in Treta, a little mercy was required. Dwapara, more mercy was required. In Kali, we are completely dependent on mercy, because our own sadhana is not going to fetch us or take us too far. Having said that, we are completely dependent on mercy. We are kripa siddhas. We started focusing on understanding how to position ourselves to receive kripa. That has been the discussion for the last 8 weeks. So what we did was we went through an understanding of the goal. What is our sadhya? We all came into Krishna consciousness through the process of sukriti, quite obviously. The sukriti itself is described in Harinam Cintamani of 3 types: karma unmukha, jnana unmukha, and bhakti unmukha. So there's agyata sukriti, or action that was performed where we did not consciously perform, or rather, we did not think that this would qualify us for the higher stages of bhakti, but we perform those actions, and in this lifetime we are engaging in such. Okay? But then you have the karma unmukha, where the sukriti that is available due to those who practice karma kanda, sukriti that's available due to those who practice jnana kanda, that does not directly lead them to the process of bhakti. They need to come in touch with a saintly person. The saintly person, or Uttam Adhikari Vaishnava, whose Shraddha is very high, whose faith in his heart is very high, he has the capacity through his preaching to deposit Shraddha. By his presence, he can deposit Shraddha in the hearts of those who are karma unmukha, jnana unmukha, or rather karmis and jnanis. We can do that, right? That has been given. So as a consequence, What we need to understand is that our own position is purely based on Kripa, because we came in touch with an extraordinary personality. We came in touch with someone who was carrying Bhakti Rasa, and he had the ability to distribute it and to cause the effect of karma and jnana to disappear from our hearts. He or she, whom we associated with, who was very saintly and very advanced, was able to place bhakti in our hearts. As a consequence, we were able to take on the process of devotional service. And then when we took on the process of devotional service, there was Adav Shraddha, which is coming in contact with the pure soul. And then there was, right, Sadhu Sangha, then there was Bhajana Kriya. And then we are hoping that Anartha Nivritti would take place in one lifetime. And we would also be able to experience Nishtha, and then, Ruchi, Ashakti, Bhava, so on and so forth. So we spoke about the three different types of Sukriti as well, as to how we got into devotional service and how fortunate we are. And we also spoke of the fact that it was due to our coming in contact with someone who was already carrying Krishna consciousness fully in their hearts. Otherwise, it was not possible. Then we also spoke of the difference between the different levels of the holy names. We spoke of the offensive chanting of the holy names, and then we spoke of the Namabhas stage, where the offenses clear up, but then it is still not pure. And then we spoke of the pure holy name and the different effects. And then we spoke of the fact that our sadhya, or goal, is to chant the pure name. Very simply, the process is to chant, and the goal is to attain the conclusion of chanting, which is to chant the pure name, both of which are the same. The process and the goal are equally potent, and they are the same. It is through the process of chanting the holy name. So we shared that fact as well. And then we also spoke of the fact that the holy name is ultimately going to lead us to a position of allowing us to know who we are, allowing us to know who is Krishna, allowing us to engage in service, and ultimately giving us pure prema, which is the attitude of the residents of Braja in relationship to Krishna, when their own sambandha has fully unfolded and they have fully understood who they are. So there is no obfuscation, there is no ignorance in their dealings with Krishna. They deal with Krishna as Brajvasis, and there is no artificial imposition on their mind. There's no such thing as they have to do this and they have to do that. It is all very spontaneous. Okay. Ultimately, the holy names we would be chanting with complete knowledge of who we are and who is Krishna. So there is Sambandha, and then there is Abhideya, activity performed with knowledge of Sambandha. And then there's Prayojana, we will experience Prema. Okay, that is the process of sadhana bhakti. That is the process of bhakti that we are in, and that is the Yuga Dharma. Then we started discussing also about Namabhas, which is the offenseless chanting of the holy names, but it is not the pure. And Namabhas has the ability to grant us everything in the material sky and also liberate. So all the objectives of the Karmi and Jnani can be fulfilled just by Namabhas. And we also saw the wonderful arrangements that the Lord has made through His holy names to deliver the Muslims who chant the name of Haram. And by doing so, Ram, triggers a completely different response where they're able to make some advancement, perhaps in a few lifetimes, and they're able to evolve from where they are to, better situations. Then we started discussions on all the offenses. The first offense that we talked about was the offense to the sadhu. And we defined sadhu as someone who has completely taken shelter of Krishna. That is the definition of sadhu. That is the definition of sadhu. So any definition of sadhu should always be that the primary Swarup Lakshana of sadhu, that he or she has taken complete shelter of Krishna. And as a consequence, such a person has to be treated with great respect because they have completely taken shelter of Krishna. That is the only qualification which the Shastras are giving us. The Tatastha Lakshana, or secondary qualifications of humility, being meek and humble and so on and so forth, all of these naturally develop in one who has taken complete shelter of Krishna and is calling upon the holy name. So sadhu is being defined as someone who has taken complete shelter of Krishna. We should bear that in mind. That's our benchmark. Okay. Now, what we need to do is also understand the second offense. The second offense is the offense of equating the holy names with with the demigods, rather saying that the demigods are independent of Krishna, considering the demigods as being independent of Krishna. Okay? Now, why does this happen? This happens because we fail to understand Krishna. We fail to understand the sadhu. The sadhu is the giver of mercy. So when we fail to understand sadhu and there is Vaishnava Parad, automatically there is a philosophical misunderstanding, and we touch upon the fact that the demigods are, independent of Krishna. This conclusion arises which is a great offense, because they have hierarchy. So Krishna is the avatari, and then we have the different Vishnu tattvas who expand from Balaram based on the function, and then you also have Shiva, who is neither Jiva nor Vishnu, and then you have Lord Brahma, who in most cases is Jiva Tattva. And there's also a very clear discussion that we had in the earlier sessions of the different qualities of Krishna versus Shiva versus Jiva. And then we also saw how they're very different and how Krishna is very different from other Vishnu avatars. There was also a discussion based on that. So establishing Krishna's supremacy, understanding him as the avatari, the source of everything else, is being covered in the second offense. And the offense is to equate Krishna with the demigods, and thinking that the demigods are independent and they can give benefits without Krishna's conclusion, without Krishna's mercy. Okay? So that is being given in the second chapter, because that's an offense as well. Okay? Now the third is disobeying, disrespecting the spiritual master. This is connected to the first offense. The first offense is sadhu ninda. The spiritual master is a sadhu. That's number one. But more than sadhu, the spiritual master is also one who has given us mercy. When I called ourselves as sadhakas who are kripa siddhas, who is giving us kripa? Kripa is coming from Guru. So it is Guru's kripa in combination with our being able to follow his orders, which give us mercy. Guru's kripa comes when we follow his orders. When do we follow Guru's orders? Guru's orders are followed when we have faith. And what is faith? Faith is our connection to the Guru. Without faith, there is no connection to the Guru. There's a very, very thin line of faith. Okay? And that thin line of faith is like an umbilical cord. That is our connection to the Guru. And once faith is disturbed, automatically the connection to Guru is cut off, or rather, it's at risk. And when is faith disturbed? When we cannot follow instructions, or when we do not follow instructions. When we believe that the Guru's instructions in themselves are faulty in one way or the other. When we start calculating. Okay? This calculation business is again because of the sadhu ninda. Ninda occurs because we are envious of sadhus. And we are envious of sadhus because we have calculations. The same calculation comes into Guru Aparad, where we start evaluating the Guru's instructions as, favorable, unfavorable, favorable, unfavorable. And then automatically we reject those which we believe are not suitable. We accept those that we believe are suitable, and it is purely on the material platform. We could convince ourselves it is spiritual, but it is purely on the material platform. Okay? Why is that so? Guru Aparad will shatter all kinds of faith. And this is both Siksha and Diksha. Okay? With Diksha Guru, there's a formal connection in addition to faith. But that connection is the formality which is supposed to reinforce faith. So if faith is lost, the formal connection is also at risk. With Shiksha Guru, there is no formal connection. It is a connection through faith alone. So when faith is lost, the connection is lost. Okay? So faith plays a very big role. And following instructions is the way of being able to reinforce faith and be able to make advancement. Why is it so? Because the gurus, both Siksha and Diksha, primarily all of them, when we say Guru Tattva, we talk about Siksha, Diksha, they have been used as instruments by Krishna to attract us to him. The Kripa Shakti of Krishna has gone into their hearts. Lord Nityananda carries all the Kripa of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya has deposited all Kripa. He said, don't disturb me. I want to engage in confidential bhajan with Jagannath. So I'm going to be in Jagannath Puri. Here, Lord Nityananda, you take all the Kripa and you go distribute it. So he, Lord Nityananda, carries all the Kripa of Lord Chaitanya. And he distributes this Kripa. And how does he distribute? He distributes through his expansions, who are the Siksha and Diksha Gurus. And he distributes this kripa by attracting the soul to the person who comes as Siksha Diksha Guru when they start doing kirtan. And when we say kirtan, we are practically talking about glorification. Both glorification, class, kirtan, both. So when they start talking and glorifying the Lord, there's attraction, and that attraction draws us, and that is how Krishna attracts us, and this is Lord Nityananda's kripa. So Krishna is using these personalities as an instrument to reach out to us. Okay? And as a consequence, when they are reaching out to us, they are giving us instructions. There's Vani. They're giving us instructions. So when those instructions are violated, automatically the connection is violated. The faith is violated. This is where the Guru's kripa gets cut off. And we are kripa siddhas. This is our lifeline. This is our lifeline. We really have no other lifeline. This is our only process, only means is to take complete shelter of Guru and to be able to make advancement by following instructions. So Guru's kripa gets cut off when instructions are not followed. It's a very important topic because faith is a connection. And we do not follow instructions when we lose faith. It is simply an act of faith. There's nothing else. Okay? Ours is a faith-based process. There's no force. It's a faith-based process. Okay? That particular connection gets cut off, or it becomes weak. It becomes, somewhat problematic. There are so many other things which can happen to a person during their entire lifetime. And why does that happen? It happens because we have karmic reactions. We go through karmic reactions, and the ups and downs of life, it makes us react in different ways because we are a part of the Mahatattva. Until there's complete purification, risk is there. So what is the best way? To be simple. Accept, follow. Accept, follow. Have faith. That's it. Accept, follow, have faith. Very simple. There's no need for speculation. There's no need for calculation. There's no need for judgment. Accept, follow. Okay? Now, we also spoke after the disrespecting the spiritual master, we also spoke about criticizing Vedic scriptures. Because the moment the spiritual master is disrespected, Vedic conclusions in the scriptures, which are the other basis of support, will also be a doubt. Because faith is disturbed in the heart, everything becomes doubtful. Considering the glories of the holy name to be imaginary. This is the other offense, where we start considering the glories of the holy name to be imaginary. Okay, we spoke about that, and the idea was that imaginary in the sense that we have no faith in the Shastric conclusion. This is again a question of losing faith in the Guru and losing faith in what he says, instructions, not following his instructions. As a consequence, all forms of kripa get cut off. Okay, sinning on the strength of chanting the holy name. Because all forms of kripa is cut off, and then we start thinking that the benefits of the holy names are imaginary, then people think that I can sin on the strength of the holy names. So we spoke about Hridaya Durbalya, we spoke about weakness of the heart, and then we also spoke about the fact that, if someone commits offenses because they're carrying karmic reactions and propensities from a previous lifetime, and sometimes Krishna notices, Krishna is in the heart, he notices everything. He notices that there are all kinds of desires in the heart of the devotee. And he says, this person needs to experience those desires. He needs to experience the duality of his desires. So he pushes him or her in the direction of those desires. Once they come in touch with thorns. Okay? They come in touch with thorns and they feel terrible pain, and that pain becomes the curing point for those karmic reactions which are troublesome. Okay? So such devotees who have gone through violations of the regulative principles or being pushed to sin, or rather commit aparadh, forced to do so because of their previous propensities, if they come back and then correct themselves and continue, it's very glorious because now they've come back with strength. They've gained some knowledge. They have the ability to offer, they have the ability to offer support to others and be able to advise them of the perils of pursuing desires. Okay? And then we also spoke about the category of what is offense, what is sin. We categorize either of those. The specialty about aparad is that there has to be a shift in consciousness, and then there also has to be repentance, both. Sin, there can be many Vedic processes which can be committed for us to be able to be relieved of sin. It's a process where you commit, go and do the puja, whatever it is that you need to do, complete your ritual, and then it obviates, or kind of removes us from the sinful path. But offense, on the other hand, you need to have a shift in consciousness in addition to being able to repent and being able to fix things. Very big difference. Okay. Then we also spoke about instructing the glories of the holy name to the faithless. And instructing the glories of the holy name to the faithless, we distinguish this from Harinam. Harinam is required because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted us to do so. It is required. That is how we are going to be distributing and attracting different personalities to the holy names. We have to distribute the holy names. This is the process of Sankirtan. That is a Yuga Dharma. There's no two ways about it. But then how do we distinguish this from instructing the glories of the holy name to the faithless? This is specifically where confidential aspects of the holy name are not distributed to those whose faith has become fixed. So this refers to 4.9, which is where Krishna says that to understand his birth, transcendent, to understand that his birth is transcendental, one has to have knowledge of tattva. One has to approach him through the process of tattva. There's 4.9 Bhagavad Gita. 4.34, Krishna says, go approach a tattva darshinaha. Then we spoke about the different types of praman, the fact that the tattvadarshi, or the pure devotee, is able to see the reality, the absolute consideration through his eyes, and he is able to talk to us, and his shabda becomes shabda praman for us. While on the other hand, for us, we should not be dependent on what we see, what we hear. We should be completely dependent on shabda, which is the conclusion of those who have seen the truth. So we spoke of these two conclusions, and we said that if we do not have a person approaching the devotee or the spiritual master in the mood described, right? Pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. Okay? He is rendering seva, he is coming in a humble mood, or she is coming in a humble mood, requesting education, requesting more details. Unless such a thing is there, then there should be no such thing as tattva darshan. That is the warning that's being given here. Do not offer tattva darshan, do not initiate those who are not qualified. So this is more of a warning to those who are performing the role of Diksha Guru, and saying, do not do so unless you find that the disciple is qualified. Because we also spoke, and it was quite a heavy class, as many of you alluded, that we affect the spiritual master. The spiritual master could be transcendently situated, but there would still be some effect of our actions, and they would have to shrug it off one way or the other. Krishna helps them, but at the same time, there is an effect. It is to be understood. In the material world, reactions have to go somewhere. You should understand that. Reactions in the material world have to go somewhere. They cannot disappear. Okay? So it's a fact that one affects the spiritual master by his or her actions, and the spiritual master has to work on himself or herself to shrug it off. And then we spoke about equating chanting with pious activities. There is some real danger where if we get into the habit of approaching and chanting holy names for everything, oh, my child is sick, I will chant Harinam. It's not a bad idea to chant and call upon the holy names, as it's always auspicious to call upon the holy names. But if we get into this association of wanting to solve material calamity through the chanting of the holy names, then slowly we would start performing, or rather getting into this mood of becoming forgetful of the real purpose of chanting the holy names. So unless someone is not well versed, and I'm assuming that all of us are in terms of the objectives of chanting the holy name, which is Krishna Prema, one should be a little careful in associating the process of chanting of holy names for all kinds of problems. Reason? Psychologically, at the subconscious, at the deep level, we would develop a notion of associating the holy names with pious activities. Pious activities are performed to relieve ourselves of karmic problems. The holy names lead us to Krishna Prema. So the recommendation is to be careful. Be careful. Don't get into the habit of thinking that we can solve, this and that and everything else to the holy names, and then finally we forget why we are chanting, and it becomes problematic. So we should remember at every given time that we are chanting for the purpose of attaining Krishna Prema, for us to be able to call upon Krishna with the deepest affection possible, which is possible in Vraja Bhakti. Okay? Vraja Bhakti, and that which is given to the residents of Vrindavan. That is the attainment of our goal. That is a sadhya. So one should not forget that. And by associating the process of chanting with many different activities, then there is a chance that the goal becomes a little obscure. Okay? So we can call upon Lord Narasimhadev. He is specifically, the Lord's position is such that Lord Narasimha, he alters the time factor. He comes and shifts the time factor, allowing us to experience a higher level of sattva so that we could take off. Okay, so Lord Narasimha's prayers are most appropriate to protect us from all forms of problems. Okay, and then we looked at chanting inattentively, pramada. Pramada, inattentive chanting. We looked at different types. We looked at the fact that it occurs because of apathy, and then it occurs because of laziness, jadya, and then it occurs because of vikshepa, being overwhelmed by material nature, by engaging in material activities to such an extent that we do not even know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Okay, we get overwhelmed. When we pick up the beads, we remember all kinds of things that we've engaged in throughout the day. So we spoke about it a couple of weeks back. And we also spoke about the different antidotes or the solutions for the different problems. And then finally, the last offense is maintaining material attachments of I and mine, which was the discussion in the session prior to that, I and mine. Okay, this is an identity crisis where we have to go through the identity and understand what is surrender. So we talked about the 6 different limbs of surrender, and we also spoke of how to practice Krishna consciousness and slowly move away from this whole concept of I and mine. We spoke of the fact that it is a little bit of a challenge in the Grahasthashram, but even in the Grahasthashram, challenges can be quite plenty in the material sphere for us to be able to surrender to the Lord. And by doing so, we also understand and come closer to conclusions given in Tattva. Okay? Then we finally, the previous session, we spoke on offenses in devotional service, the Seva Aparad. We spoke on the 32 different types of offenses, and we also focused on the fact that all these offenses, for most part, are related to the process of deity worship. Okay? Devotees who have developed deep taste of the holy name, in one sense, do not feel very enthused about deity worship. In other words, it's a matter of being very attracted to the holy name. After performing many, many years of deity worship, they suddenly find that engaging with their limbs externally spoils their ability, or rather interferes with their ability to connect to Krishna through the holy names. So they have a tendency to not so much engage in deity worship, but focus purely on the holy names, because the holy names are capable of giving everything, because everything is contained within the holy names. Okay? So finally, we spoke of deity worship, but deity worship is a very powerful means to our end of being able to attain Krishna Prema. Deity worship facilitates the chanting of the holy names. It strengthens our ability to chant the holy names. Okay? So ultimately, we ended the class in the previous session by saying that it is Nama Aparad which leads to Seva Aparad. And then Seva Aparad ultimately again would lead to further Nama Aparad. So my request to devotees who are wanting to enter into Pujari service is to ensure that you really work very hard on chanting the holy names. Ensure that your 16 rounds are pakka. Ensure that you are able to accommodate the chanting and prioritize the chanting over anything else, because the chanting is what is going to help you while you render personal devotional service to the deity, who is non-different from Krishna. Okay, so that was the end. And then today we are having a session of a recap. And what I do propose to do is, after taking some questions, if there are any, the following week, I plan to start sessions on Sri Madhurya Kadambini. And this is a rendering of the deeper aspects of Bhakti Rasa by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, one of our very predominant acharyas. Both Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Prabhupada have quoted heavily and have drawn upon his translations of Srimad Bhagavatam. They have drawn upon the scriptures that he has written. In fact, he has written voluminous scriptures in different topics, and he is, we are going to go into his rendering of Sri Madhurya Kadambini. We may not go into it in such great detail, but we will see how far we can go in being able to offer, the subject matter of Sri Madhurya Kadambini, so that we can use the subject matter to further make some advancement in the chanting of the holy names. So if there are any questions, we can take them. Okay, I don't see any questions. I think I'll stop here, and we'll again meet in the following session on Monday and Thursday, and we'll continue our discussion, but this time it would be Sri Madhurya Kadambini. What I would also like to have is for you, all of you, whoever has been very kind to participate either during the live session or who have been very kind in being able to attend and encourage me in this endeavor, being able to use these classes, to give me some feedback on how this has helped you, or to give me feedback otherwise on what you would have liked to see happen and what you would prefer. And this would allow me to formulate, the further sessions and, try and improve on them if I need to. So I would look forward to any feedback that you may offer as well. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.